And so now that our presentation started, I always like to start off with reminding everyone that Tucson Audubon's mission is to inspire people to enjoy and protect birds. And we do that through recreation, education, restoration, and conservation of the habitat upon which we all depend. And so one of the ways this is going to go a long way for both covering the education as well as the conservation aspect of that. Um, and so with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it on over to my colleague. Like I said, she is the restoration project manager here on staff, and her name is Pickett. I'm really looking forward to today's presentation. So again, welcome all. And with that, I'll give it to you, Aya.
Awesome. Thanks for that introduction, Danito. And yeah, welcome everyone to this presentation. I'm really glad y'all are interested in learning a little bit more about Montezuma quail. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Actually, I want to be over here. Good. Oop, oop. Here we go. We're getting there. We're getting there. Okay. All right. Can y'all see that? Okay. Awesome.
Yep.
All right. Cool. So yeah, welcome everyone. We're gonna get right into it. So first, just a little bit more introduction on me. Like Danito said, I'm currently the restoration project manager at Tucson Audubon, but I'm originally from Michigan. So I got my bachelor's from Michigan State in fisheries and wildlife ecology, go green. And so it's a very odd thing for me to say, wow, 95 degrees today. What a cool day to be outside. Very strange. After I graduated with my bachelor's, I worked a couple different seasonal field jobs with birds and other wildlife. So I've worked with golden-cheeked warblers, gravirios, Arctic terns. I've also worked at a couple banding stations like Michigan State Bird Observatory and Intermountain Bird Observatory. In my current role as the project manager, I manage a couple main projects. One being the Montezuma Quail Food Plot project that I'm going to talk about today. I also manage the saguaro planting project, where we're planting 14,000 saguaros around Arizona. So that's what I was doing all of yesterday, was trying to get a couple more saguaros planted in while we still have a little bit of moisture in the ground. And I also run a songbird banding station at Empire Ranch in Las Cienegos. And during the summer, I also help with Southwest willow flycatcher surveys in New Mexico. So all fun stuff, a little bit of plant stuff in there, a little bit of bird stuff in there. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about both.
Hey, Aya, real quick, I'm sorry to cut in. Nancy actually made a great point. This also has its captions are available if that makes it easier for people. If you look at the bottom right hand of your screen, there's three little dots that say more. If you click on that, you can enable the closed captioning for this presentation as well. So apologize for not mentioning that, and thanks, Nancy, for bringing that to my attention.
Yeah, I love using closed captions. It makes it a lot easier for me to kind of visualize the things that are being talked about. So good tip. All right. So what is this quail called? There are so many names for it. Different groups use different names. The name that I'm going to use today is Montezuma quail. This is how I kind of learned about the quail. I'm a birder, so this is kind of like the birder's name for it. It's also the scientific name, but it has lots of other names that you can use too. One of the older names that I've seen in some literature is Messina or Messina quail, it used to be called. Within the hunting community, this is Mearn's quail. This is 100% Mearn's quail. I went to a hunting fest last year and I tried to ask people about Montezuma quail and they're like, what's Montezuma quail? This is Mearn's quail. So hunting community, Mearn's quail, 100%. Also called Harlequin quail because of its really cool face pattern. Also masked quail, crazy quail, silly quail. It's also called fool's quail because its main defense mechanism is to run and hide, and it will hide for as long as possible until you're up right close to it, and then it'll flush. So if you're looking for a Montezuma quail and you're looking all around, might be right at your feet, you might feel a little bit like a fool. So fool's quail, or squat quail, which I'm assuming is kind of for similar reasons. So let's talk a little bit about identification. This is a fairly easy bird to identify because there aren't really a whole lot of species that overlap in its range. But it does have a couple other quail that I've brought in just for comparison, just so we can see maybe what's somewhat similar to a Montezuma quail. So first, northern bobwhite. Females are kind of this similar kind of brownish color, but the facial markings of it are pretty different. Northern bobwhite have that really distinct kind of whitish stripe over its eye and kind of under its chin. And then the males look very different, have all black heads, so pretty easy to tell that one. Scaled quail is another one that might be confused for it. Pretty easy to tell. It has a chest with all of those really intricate scale markings, which is really beautiful. The females and males look the same, so I only have one picture for that one. Also, the thing with northern bobwhites and scaled quail is that they're mostly in the grasslands. Montezuma quail will be more in the sky islands. They can come down from the sky islands on good years, but generally not going to have a whole lot of overlap there. And then the last one I'm bringing in just for fun because it does look very similar to Montezuma quail, but it does not overlap in range at all, which is ocellated quail. And this is a species of quail that's just at the southern edge of the Montezuma quail range, but it does look very similar. So I brought it in just for fun. They're located more in like southern Mexico, Honduras, Guatemala region. So unless you're down there, you probably don't have to worry about messing these up and mixing them up together. But I always like learning about birds in different countries, so I put it in there anyway. All right, so like I was saying, Montezuma quail are mostly north of Guatemala in that Central American region, mostly in Mexico, but does come into the United States in southern Arizona, New Mexico, and a little bit into Texas. They are not a migratory species, and they have really small home ranges. They don't go very far at all. They can move 150 feet per day, so they're not really going too many places. Their habitat, they really like having a lot of native grasses in these pine oak woodlands. So a lot in these Sky Islands and Mount Lemmon and Madera Canyon, I know are really big hotspots. And kind of range and elevation, I think generally they're higher in elevation, but yeah, again, they can come kind of low in good years. And when they do come down to lower elevations, I've read that they frequent stream corridors and they can use desert habitats, though that might be a little bit more rare for them. And so this is kind of like what generally their habitat might look like, their ideal habitat. And this is a bird for everyone, right? Birders love them, hunters love them. They have such a cute face, how could you not? And even if you're not a birder or a hunter, they're so cute. Yeah, if you like nature, you probably like Montezuma quail. I don't think I've ever encountered anyone who's like, Montezuma quail, I hate Montezuma quail. So just kind of a fun species. And I know this is a very blurry map, but this is just a map that I pulled up from eBird today, just showing some recent observations for Montezuma quail. So we're seeing in Mount Lemmon, in Madera Canyon, a little bit in Las Ciénegas. So I guess that's a good sign for them. So yeah, that's what that is. And like I said, hunters love Montezuma quail. They're kind of a fun species to hunt. Like any hunting species, you need a hunting license for them. Their hunting season is December 1st to February 11th, so kind of a winter hunting species. And you can take 8 Montezuma quail per day. The other kind of fun thing about hunting Montezuma quail is you can hunt with dogs, which is kind of interesting. And I've seen a couple different breeds listed as good hunting breeds for Montezuma quail. I'm not a hunter. So if you are a hunter and you do hunt with dogs and you don't hunt with either of these breeds, maybe put it in the chat. Kind of interested to know. We love talking about dogs. If we have an opportunity to talk about dogs, why not? So Brittany Spaniel, I've read range close and work well in close quarters, which is good for a bird that's called fool's quail, right? You probably want a dog that stays close to you whenever you come up on a, Mearn's quail that might be really close. But I've heard that Labrador retrievers work well as well. But again, if you have other opinions, happy to hear about those. All right. So the next feature I want to talk about Montezuma quail is their feet. Montezuma quail have enormous feet, and it is because of what they're eating. So they like to dig up all these super kind of like underground tubers. So they need those big digging feet to eat some of those. And I'm going to kind of go into some detail on what those plant species are that they like to eat. So Montezuma quail, they have a lot of different food items, but there are really only a couple main ones. One of the species that I don't have listed here are acorns. They really like to eat a lot of acorns, but for the purposes of this project today, I'm just going to focus on these other three main things that they like to eat. So there's wood sorrel, which is also called oxalis. I'm going to use the name oxalis because that's just what I've gotten used to saying, but you could say either one. It doesn't matter too much to me. Nutsedge and also tepary bean are things that they like to eat. So let's talk first about the oxalis. This is called informally the shamrock. So if you go around to nurseries around St. Patrick's Day, you might see some different varieties of oxalis there. They are a pretty domesticated plant with certain species. So yeah, and they're found in scrublands or coniferous forests. Also kind of higher in elevation species. They also really need a lot of moisture. So that's something that's really important about oxalis. And they can be difficult to find. This is because they only have leaves during a certain time of year. So they need a lot of moisture to sprout that stem and create those leaves. And then after a couple of weeks, those leaves are going to die back and it's going to look like there's nothing there at all. So for that reason, it can be difficult to find. When they are out, they're pretty easy to identify. They have this really distinct three-leafed clover kind of look to them. And they also will sprout this like one very pretty pink flower on them as well. And oxalis is Greek for oxus, which means sharp or sour. I've read that you can eat them. I'm not an expert plant forager, so I would not, I'm not the person to tell you that you can go out and eat as much oxalis as you can, but I've heard that they are edible. And they have that sour taste because they have oxalic acid in them, which is also found in stuff like spinach and other things that we actually do eat, but I think you're not supposed to eat a whole ton of it. So check your local foraging book if you're interested in eating them. If not, maybe leave them for Montezuma quail. All right, and so the second one that I have is nutsedge. So the Montezuma quail will dig up all these little tubers down here. That's what they like to eat. This is a fairly common species of plant that I find around. They have these really angular leaves, right? We know this old saying, sedges have edges, so these very edged, almost kind of sharp leaves to them. Yeah. And then we also have tepary bean. Tepary bean is a really common, or a fairly common plant to find. Also one of the oldest domesticated and cultivated plants in Arizona, I believe. This is not something that the Montezuma quail are necessarily digging up, but the tepary bean, once the pods are ready, they'll burst and spread the seeds all over the place. So they do kind of have to hunt for them on the ground. They're not necessarily like picking them off the plant and eating them, I think. All right, so let's talk about some challenges of conserving these food items. So oxalis in particular needs a lot of moisture. These plants will thrive with more moisture as well, which means that they're kind of dependent on more of these more riparian areas, right? And what we know about riparian areas is that they're a little bit more exposed to erosion, whether that be from development, mining, cattle. They're also dependent on rain, right? Like everything in the desert, everything is dependent on rain, and we've been seeing this trend of shifting rain patterns, which is impacting these species. The other challenge that comes with these species is that they're not really found in nurseries. Like I said, oxalis, there are some species that you can find in nurseries, but not necessarily the ones that grow native in Arizona. So that is a little bit of a challenge for us to secure these food plants. So how do we source these? That's the challenge, right? So there are a couple ways that we're going about sourcing these seeds so that we can make these food plots for Montezuma quail. The first is we source directly from the source, right? We work with some landowners that might have oxalis or nutsedge growing on their property, and we take a little chunk of that and we propagate it in our food plots so that it can spread, and they do spread pretty readily. The second way that we're trying to do this is indirectly from the quail. So we're working with hunters to collect seeds from the quail that they've hunted. So kind of a good use of, a quail that's already hunted. We can kind of use that hunted quail and create more habitat for them, right? And one of the really common questions I get about this is, how are you getting these seeds from these quail? And the answer is we're collecting them from the crop of the bird. And so what is the crop of the bird? People are asking me, I don't know, is that the stomach? Is it digested material? And it's actually not digested material. So when a bird first eats seeds, it actually goes straight into the crop. And this is just basically like a storage organ for these seeds before they're digested. So if the Montezuma quail were like foraging around, maybe they found a really nice patch of oxalis or tepary bean, and they want to eat as much of it as possible in a short amount of time, right? Keeping your head to the ground is not the best way of looking out for predators. So you want to eat really fast, but you can't digest that all in one sitting. So it goes into this crop, this storage organ, until it can be digested. And then later on in these other organs, it gets some acid on it, which breaks it down. It goes into the gizzard, which has those rocks in it, right? It breaks it down a little bit more. But in the crop, no digestion is happening. That's just storage. So we can collect these crops from these hunters that are able to donate them to us that contain these intact seeds that we can plant. So once we source these seeds, the idea is that we're going to plant them out. We have a couple food plots at our Patton Center in Patagonia. If you go into the backyard, if you've ever been to Patton, which I'm assuming that some of you probably have, you go into the backyard and you're heading towards the viewing pavilion back there and you take a right, there are two big metal planters right there, and that is for these seeds that we're collecting. So the idea is that we're going to collect these seeds, we're going to grow them out, multiply them, and then we can bring these seeds to other places that might have really good wet riparian areas or have been restored using rock dams or something like that. And then we can kind of create more habitat that way by creating this seed source first. So this is a little bit of a blurry picture, but just to give you an idea of kind of what we're doing with these, this is a picture of some seeds that I was sorting out from the Montezuma quail crop. So this is really interesting, right? I've been doing lots of reading and lots of reading on what Montezuma quail eat. So it was really cool to see in the crop that exactly what I was reading in the literature is reflected in what is in the crop. So we're seeing right up here, lots of oxalis, lots of nutsedge, lots of tepary bean. We have some miscellaneous bugs and stuff that I wasn't able to identify. Can't do a whole lot with bugs, unfortunately. So those just kind of get into the miscellaneous pile. But yeah, we're basically sorting these out so we know what we're planting and then planting them. So this is one of our food plots at Patton right now. I know it looks like wild. It looks like, oh my gosh, what's even in there? This is mostly tepary bean. This whole tall thing right here, that is a ton of tepary bean. There's also some oxalis and nutsedge kind of hidden in the bottom there, but tepary bean is definitely taken over the whole thing, which is great. That's exactly what I want to see. So that is what we're looking at. In the future, we're going to be collecting more crops. We've recently secured a grant from Arizona Sportsmen for Wildlife Conservation to do more outreach so we can collect more crops from hunters, spread awareness on the project, and we're also going to create some updated signage around the food plots because this has some great information on it, but it is just some laminated pieces of paper. So kind of gonna update that a little bit with something a little bit fancier. So that is the idea. We'll be at Quail Fest again this year to increase some awareness of the project. And so if you're listening to this project and you think that it's really cool, there's a couple ways that you can support. If you're a hunter and you hunt a Montezuma quail, you can donate the crop of the Montezuma quail. If you're not a hunter, but you would still like to participate in it, you can volunteer to sort some seeds from crops. This is a picture from a volunteer event we had at the beginning of this year. There's Donito in it. And if you have oxalis growing on your property, feel free to reach out to me. And if you would like to donate some of it, that would be awesome. Or if you're a gardener and you like propagating plants, consider hosting a food plot. Really interesting way to, have some restoration going on in your own backyard. So this project is supported by Southern Arizona Quail Forever, the U.S. Forest Service, Arizona Sportsmen for Wildlife Conservation, and us. And thank you, and I will take any questions you have. And here's my contact information as well if you think of any questions later.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Aya. I've got one question just right off this last topic that you were talking about. So Kathleen McCoy says that at the U of A demonstration garden up in Phoenix, they removed the nutsedge. Could the nuts from that nutsedge be viable if it was sent to you?
That is an interesting question. Maybe. The other challenge with nutsedge is I know that there's an invasive species of nutsedge, so we'd have to make sure that it's not the invasive one that we plant, but if it's not, then probably yes, I would think. That would be cool, yeah.
Awesome. And then I had another question from Kevin who's asked, because Montezuma quail don't have a large range, do you think that there is a decent chance that the ones that have been reported at Gordon Hirabayashi campground will hang around that area?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, they don't go very far, so I would expect that they would hang around for a while.
Awesome. Well, let's see. That's all the written questions that I had in the chat. Let's see if anybody would like to ask Aya a question that you had during the demonstration. Go ahead and unmute yourself and please feel free. Let's see. Nancy asked a question real quick. So she said tubers and seeds. She may have missed the plant tubers info. So did you have any about like tubers or just basically the seeds that you covered? That's kind of extensively what they eat.
Yeah, I guess that's mostly just those oxalis bulbs and those nutsedge kind of tuber bulb kind of type things. I can go back a couple slides and going to show you what I have in here. So let's take a look. So this is what we're looking at, right? So this is what the Montezuma quail are eating from the oxalis, this bulb right here. And then all these nutsedge kind of tubers down here is what they're eating. And then from the tepary, I guess those aren't really seeds, but beans, right? Tepary beans. Yeah.
The beans are inside the shell.
Right.
This is Kathleen. My question is, how do I know if I would be sending you invasive species? And the other related question is, since we are so much hotter than you are, and definitely hotter than the high elevations you're talking about, do you know if the nutsedge and or the oxalis nuts can thrive in that elevation?
You know, I'm not super sure about the elevation part. Um, I would assume that if they get enough moisture, they would probably be fine. One of the other things that I know about oxalis in particular is that they really like to be under shade. So that might be something that you might want to consider in growing them out. Um,
Well, actually, I want to send them to you. You can grow them out, but I
right.
want to make sure it's
Yeah.
worthwhile sending, or it's worthwhile. How do I know that the nutsedge is not the invasive kind?
That's a great question. I'm actually not super sure on that one. I'd have to go back and take a look. But if you send me an email, I can let you know.
Yeah, I can do that. And you might want to talk to one of the master gardeners in Tucson. They might be able to help you out a little bit.
Oh, that's a great tip. Thanks.
Sure.
Excellent. Real quick, I've got another question. I got a few more in the chat now. Larissa Harding is saying, like, with the challenge of wanting to plant oxalis and nutsedge or others into riparian areas, is that the majority of the Mearns quail are actually not in the riparian or not resident to riparian areas, in the oak savanna woodlands, as you were saying. Do you have any plans to plant seeds in more common Mearns areas rather than in the riparian areas?
That's a good question too. We haven't actually gotten to that stage of the project. We're kind of still in the seed sourcing stage, so I really haven't looked into where exactly we're going to plant them. But that is a good idea. I will take that into consideration.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And then Simon asked, how do you physically collect the crop? Do the hunters freeze them and then you dry them, or just kind of talk about that process a little bit?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what the hunters do is they just put the crop in just a paper bag, and that's pretty much it. It just kind of dries out on its own, and then you just break the crop open, and it just has all those dry seeds in it. So that's basically it. It's pretty straightforward on that part. This is something that I didn't talk about, what I was planning on talking about, was that one of the things we're going to be doing this year is we're going to be distributing prepaid shipping boxes. So people can just put the crops right in the box and just ship it right to us. No need to kind of like see someone face to face or anything like that. So we're hoping that that'll be kind of an extra way that people can get some crops to us.
Wonderful. Let's see. Karen Morley asked, what is involved in having a plot? So I guess kind of what goes into that and how are those established?
Yeah, so I would just have to get the seeds to you. We just have to make sure that the plants would get everything they need. So oxalis, depending on how much shade you might have on your property, we might get some shade cloth to you so that the oxalis get the right amount of shade. Our food plots also have irrigation on them, but if you would be able to water them on a regular basis, that would be ideal. But if you're interested, yeah, I can send you more details if you shoot me an email, and I can pull up my email again.
Excellent. I guess in that same vein, Pauline also commented that they would be interested in planting a seed bed in their yard as well.
Awesome.
And that was from Pauline. And so, yeah, Pauline, you can see Aya's contact information right there on the screen. I think the easiest thing to do would just be to send her an email, just letting her know that you're interested in that, and she'll definitely take care of the next steps there.
Yeah, I will say we don't currently have seed. We planted all the seed that we collected last year, but we should be getting some around the hunting season, so December to February. But after that time, we'll be able to get some seed to you.
I've got a question. I think that's allowed. So when you replant the seeds that you take from the crop, what's the success rate there? Is it essentially just like putting a regular seed in the ground, or is it a little bit less successful, or what are you seeing there?
Yeah, it is pretty successful. Yeah, like you said, like I showed in that food plot, like this one, you can see these are seeds that were collected from crops, right? We're seeing a ton of stuff come back. One of the things that I'm trying to kind of hammer out this year is how much irrigation to put on these plants, right? There's not really a whole lot of information out there on how to cultivate these specific types of plants, less tepary bean, because a lot of people do plant tepary bean, but not a whole lot of people are planting oxalis out there. So that's one of the things that I'm trying to hammer out this year. But yeah, pretty successful, I would say.
Perfect. And then actually along that same line of how few people are planting it,
Mm,
Linda asks, are you working with Borderlands Restoration, who are
yes.
also involved in planning along with doing erosion control in southern Arizona?
Yes, that's one aspect that I forgot to talk about. We're also working with Borderlands Nursery. They're growing out some oxalis for us, and also a couple different other species that I didn't even list here. So yes, definitely working with them. Great resource to have.
Excellent. And then Nancy had another question, like another tuber question, and she was kind of saying that they seems like they could be collected and replanted in a plot, or in natural locations.
Mm.
Is that seem to kind of fall in line? Like, do you think that would be a possibility to plant tubers, like I said, in the plots or in natural locations?
Yeah, so right now we actually have both. So we have them in kind of these troughs like this, but we also have some plots in the ground. So if you ever go to Patton, there is actually a plot right behind this fence right here, where we have another one growing out, and then a couple other ones around Patton as well. But yeah, they can definitely be planted directly in the ground as well.
Excellent. So far, that's all I've got in the chat. Does anyone else have a question that they would like to ask Aya themselves? All right. Well, so like I said, so we'll go ahead
I
and
have a question.
yeah, go ahead, Roberta.
Um, have there been Montezuma quail sighted at the Patton Center?
Yeah, they have been. I don't know if any have been recently, and it's not super common, but they do come down sometimes.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Aya, this is
Yes.
Feline Main. And I don't know if you read my notice in the chat that said that I have pictures of them at Timber Camp, which is in Tonto National Forest, US 60, right above the Salt River Canyon, going north. Anybody else ever seen them that far north? Because that's certainly not the map that you had.
Yeah, that is pretty far north for them. That's pretty cool that you made that observation. Yeah, I don't know that any have been observed that far north.
I also saw one in the top of a scrub oak just off of Forest Road 651 on Pinnell Mountain. Never saw any more again. Never saw them, but just that one time. Um, a male, uh, kind of an out. I suppose he was a lookout. But
Mhm.
anybody else see them in the Pinnells?
So Larissa Harding from Arizona Game and Fish is actually in the presentation and on the chat, and they said that they are sighted in the White Mountains, and there are actually more that are north of the Salt River as well. Probably not nearly as plentiful, but that they are sighted in the White Mountains north of.
Okay, okay. I was hoping they were still around.
Yeah.
I haven't seen them for a number of years, but I was hoping.
Very cool.
So Nancy Grayson has asked, where are places to sight them? So just kind of, can you give some examples of some of the more, like you said, I know they're tough birds in general to sight, but just, some of the more reliable places that people may be able to go find them.
Yeah, I've seen on eBird a lot in Madera Canyon, a lot on Mount Lemon. There were a couple sightings in Los Cienegos. I think that's less reliable. If it were me, I would probably go to Madera and hike around there. But eBird is a really great resource if you've ever accessed eBird for, learning where the most common sightings are. I believe that the map that I brought up was from the past month that I pulled from. So yeah, we're seeing lots in Madera Canyon, a little bit over here on this Coronado National Forest property. Also in the Chiricahuas. I've actually only seen Montezuma quail once, and it was in the Chiricahuas, right next to the Southwest Research Station, if anyone knows where that is.
Just from my personal experience as well, I've had good luck seeing them near Harshaw, like in that area just south of Patagonia in the mountains there. But Larissa chimed in again and said that Gardner and Hog Canyons are famous locations for the Mearns or Montezuma quail. So those are two locations that you may want to give a shot. And yeah, like she said, anywhere really in those oak woodlands in and around the Patagonia area are going to be successful. And yeah, Linda points out you are more likely to hear them than see them. So it also may be advisable to become familiar with their call before you go out looking for them.
Good point. Yeah, the only time I saw one was, while we were driving, and it like ran right across the road, and that's the only way that we would have seen it probably. So yeah, a very cryptic species, one that's hard to find for sure.
And to piggyback on that about kind of car birding, during the festival, that was how the groups that saw them from the vans. They're just kind of along the roads, and we don't know if maybe they're not quite as spooked by the vans, or like Aya said, that because they tend to just hunker down and wait for you to pass, you get a better look at them through the vans. But yeah, car birding is another good way to sometimes see Montezuma quail. And so Larissa, again, thank you for chiming in so much, Larissa. All these are really helpful. She said really they don't do a whole lot of calling. Usually when you do hear them is when they flush. And so you may not, if you're just kind of walking through waiting for them to call, they may not call, but like I said, when they flush is generally when you hear them.
Good to have a couple tools under your belt on how to identify them. But yeah, I don't know how many times I don't even know if I know what a Montezuma quail sounds like. I always kind of expect that they're just gonna like run out from somewhere.
Right. And you did say that acorns is one of their foods that they eat.
That is definitely one of the main ones. But yeah, just for the purposes of this project, just wanted to focus on the small herbaceous things. But acorns does make up a pretty big chunk of their diet. Their diet kind of changes depending on what time of year it is. Forgot when they really like acorns, but yeah, it does fluctuate depending on what time of year.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Does anyone have any other questions that they've thought of? We've still got a little time. If not, I would like to thank everyone for being here. And if you would like to, I always encourage in these virtual events at the end for people to unmute themselves and thank Aya personally. We love these events, and so we're always really appreciative of the people that are willing to take their time and present to us. So thank you very much, Aya. I appreciate it. I learned a lot. Well, let's see. Actually, Nancy has a question. Nancy, do you have another question? Would you like to?
I do. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Nancy Kate. I met recently a woman who has 80 acres out in Patagonia and getting together again. And I was wondering if there's something I can resource for her. If she has the quail on her property somewhere, how can she help support and encourage, the bird's habitat there?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say just maintaining these areas where oxalis might be able to grow is definitely a good one. Kind of, preventing cattle from kind of trampling these areas that might be really good sites for food plots. That's one. But yeah, if she has oxalis on her property and she would like to donate, that's would be one way that would be really helpful for this project in particular.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
You're doing a super hour. Thank you.
Thanks for that question, Auntie Kate. So Kathleen McCoy has a question, and she said, what was the name of the festival that you talked about regarding the seeds?
Yeah, so that's Quail Fest. I believe it's in Sonoyta. And yeah, it's this whole festival geared towards quail hunters specifically. There's a couple different exhibitors that'll come out. I believe there was even one exhibitor that brought live quail just for demonstration purposes, just to kind of show. I think they brought masked bobwhite just to kind of show people what masked bobwhite looked like. But yeah, I think that's going to be towards the end of this year, the first week of hunting season, which I think is December something. What was it? Yeah, like second week of December, I believe.
I'm looking it up right now so I can get it. It looks like last year the festival started on December 9th. And then I'm just going to put in the chat basically a website that you can click on. You can go to quailforever.org. And they'll have information about it there. But yeah, last year it started at December 9th, but I couldn't find the info for this year.
This is Larissa Harding. Quail Fest is usually opening weekend of Mearn's quail season down in the fairgrounds. So I would guess it's either the 2nd or the 3rd of December.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Larissa. So let's see. I think with that, I've got all the questions in the chat handled. Does anyone have any further questions they'd like to ask Aya?
This is Jim Littlejohn, and I got a couple points. Number one, Quail Fest is Sunday, December the 3rd down at the fairgrounds in Sonoyta. Secondly, Nancy, your question about your friend in Patagonia and everything, contact either me or the Tucson, Arizona Game and Fish, and they'll walk the person's property and make suggestions on what they can do to help from a general habitat standpoint, which will relate to helping for the Montezuma quail and everything.
What a great resource.
Thank you so much. Your name again, sir?
Jim Littlejohn.
Okay. Thank you, Jim.
My email address is underneath my name up there.
I am writing it down. Thank you.
You bet.
Awesome. Thanks, Jim.
You bet.
Yeah, thank you so much. Excellent. Like I said, so if anybody's got any last thoughts or questions, now is the time. But if not, like I said, just thank you to Aya. We got a lot of thank yous in the chats. A lot of this was very, very helpful. I'm not going to go through and read them all, but just a lot of thank yous, a lot of people learning a lot of stuff. Same here. I learned a lot. And like I said, so thanks to Aya. Thanks to all of you who took the time to come this morning. We really appreciate it. We appreciate your support of Tucson Audubon and basically all birds in general. And like I said, lastly, if you missed anything or if you want to go back and listen to anything, you can find this recording. It will be available on our YouTube channel. You can find that by just going to YouTube and typing in Tucson Audubon. That will take you to our channel. And every virtual event that we do is posted there. So we've got a lot of great content. So with that, I'm going to wrap it up. And again, thanks to everyone for being here. And thank you to Aya for presenting today.
Yeah, thanks everyone for being here. I love all the Montezuma quail questions and how excited people are about it. It's something that keeps me going in my career, just like all the passion that everyone has. So thanks.
Cool. All right. Goodbye, everybody. Have a wonderful day.